Persons listening to this show should experience varying degrees of euphoria and might radiate a warm glow of truth from their entire being. This phenomenon sometimes lasts hours after a typical brain massage. If you are listening with another lights-on listener and they begin to glow, don't be concerned. This is a phenomenon normally associated with Pastor Scheidbach's patented brain massage technique and merely means the truth has set them free. The devil beware. Pastor Scheidbach is on the air.
Hello, I'm Dr. Scheidbach, pastor at the Lighthouse Baptist Church in Santa Maria, California, and your brain masseur. Get ready for your brain massage.
The battle for America is on.
There are 4 things God requires. Every man must speak truth to his neighbor, execute the judgment of truth and peace in their gates, which would refer to our courts and so on, or wherever justice intersects with citizens. And none should imagine evil in their hearts against their neighbors. And finally, we must not love a false oath. RFK dropped the first shoe. He has the receipts for what we already knew. Well, sort of. The Health and Human Services under the Biden administration was actively involved in child sex and slave trafficking. Now, it's time for our DOJ to drop the second shoe and move to arrests and filing charges. Let's roll. I wrote a book. I think you'll find the title intriguing. Islam does not understand our system of governance. It seems most Americans under 30 don't either. America is not majority rule, not as many suppose. By the way, I'm not here offering commentary on election fraud. It's something else. Really. Stay tuned. The next plandemic has been launched, and here's what's coming and how to prepare. My dear friends, it's time for your brain massage.
Truth served here, flavored with delectable wit, succulent sagacity, luscious logic. A gourmet meal for the mind.
I am in Winnipeg, Manitoba, here to preach for Dr. Sullivan, pastor of Pembina Baptist Church here in Pembina, and I'm very honored to have been asked to participate in his graduation exercises for his Bible college. Always loved being around this dear brother and his exciting church. I believe it's the largest Baptist church or independent Baptist church in the entire country of Canada anyway. RFK moved into Health and Human Services, HHS, and found proof of what we already knew and feared. The Health and Human Services Department under the Biden administration was actively involved in child sex and slave trafficking. Well, now it's time for our DOJ to drop the second shoe and move to arrests and filing charges. Also, the FBI needs to seriously investigate what Biden and Kamala knew and when did they know it. The money trail must be traced, no matter how labyrinthine it might be, tracking down every shell company. We know how many Biden chalked up. And did any of it travel into any of the Biden pockets? The entire assembly line set up by Xavier Becerra to fast-track illegals into the United States is being dismantled. Oh, by the way, that's the guy that ran Biden's HHS. Remember, Dr. Oz warned us this was coming. CMS, that's Centers for Medicaid Service, has been funding things, he said, that will, quote, make you shiver, end quote. And, quote, if you thought the stuff USAID was funding horrified you, wait until we show you what's been going on with CMS, end quote. During Thursday's cabinet meeting, RFK pulled back the first curtain. Go ahead and listen to what Mr. RFK had to say.
We have ended HHS as the role as the vector, the principal vector in this country for child trafficking. And during the Biden administration, HHS became a collaborator in child trafficking and for sex and for slavery.
Did you catch that? We've ended HHS's role as the principal vector in this country for child trafficking. And that's during the Biden administration, he said. Health and Human Services Department became a collaborator in child trafficking for sex and for slavery. He wanted to tell us that there are as many as 300,000 children that Biden's administration lost And remember the guy that ran for a seat as a Georgia state representative that publicly called for Trump to be assassinated? His name is Carl Sprayberry. He was lately arrested for his participation in a child sex trafficking operation. In Florida, Trump's FBI busted an international child trafficking ring, trafficking ring operating in Florida, in which more than 1 million videos of child pornography were seized. Many of them involved the sexual abuse of babies. Most of these videos were accessible through links on TikTok. The investigators reported these were some of the most egregious, disturbing content they've ever seen, quote unquote. Don't anyone dare ask, how can God allow this to happen? Good night. How can we do this? How can any human being be so vile, so without humanity? How can anyone, for example, how can any 60-year-old pervert think it's okay to marry a 9-year-old little girl? One of these monsters married a child and abused her on their wedding night, and she was dead the next morning. Who are these barbaric, devil-possessed fiends that think this is okay? You ask. How can God allow this? You blame God for what vile and wicked men do to children? Well, that's convenient. God didn't do this. Wicked perverts do this kind of thing. And you spend your time blaming God like some fool? He made you the protector of these children. But you know what you did? You brilliant Christians? You know what you did? You decided God's truth, God's law, God's word must be separated from and banned from politics. And I'm being generous. How stupid can you be? How easily duped you are. What part of you is so perverted that Satan was able to seduce you into blaming God for your failure to protect his children? Ooh, you're getting pretty rough on us here. I think you need to listen to this. And I'm using the word you rhetorically. Let me tell you what Jesus thinks about this. But first, know this, O man, that blames God for your perversities. Jesus is prince over the kings of the earth. Revelation 1:5. Christ is king, and you're not obeying him. All mankind are his subjects, and you're not submitted to him. Ephesians 1:21. He sees what you're doing, throwing his word out of your schools, banning his word and prayer in your dark chambers of wickedness. You vile Ventura councilwoman telling a mother to stop praying and saying to her, we don't pray here. Yeah, I guess, well, you told the truth there, didn't you? That's right. You spoke the truth there. Benjamin Franklin counseled the Congress to open their assembly in prayer to the Christian God, but you small-minded, arrogant, deluded people have banned prayer in your chambers of darkness. You know who you are. You are the ones Jesus, the King, will mark for destruction on his return. Oh yeah, he said after he takes account of his own servants, he's going to say, now round up those people who said concerning Jesus, we will not have that man to reign over us, and slay them before me. Jesus didn't say that. Yes, he did. That's what Jesus said. You intrude into the sacred bond of a child and her mother and work to groom her child out from under her into perverse rebellion against her creator, to deny her God-assigned gender and then transition her. You wicked rebel against nature and nature's God. You will face judgment. If stupid, weak men refuse to stand up to protect their own children, if the men refuse to stand in defense of helpless, confused children and protect them from these predators, don't you dare blame God. God blames you. Let me tell you, preacher. Let me tell you, you wimpy good-for-nothing dads. Let me tell you, that mother who went alone into that council chamber to pray and testify for Christ, the ruler of this world, she will watch as Jesus whips you, lousy servants, you Christians who refuse to stand up for these children. She will watch you as Jesus whips you with many stripes. Yeah, that's a bit of Bible you skip over, but Jesus won't skip over it. He blames all who reject his laws, and he blames his servants that, knowing his will, support this abuse of our children and the erasure of women. How dare you allow a man to go into the ring with a woman and beat her to death? What monsters! Be sure your sin will find you out. You blame God, God blames you. So let's see how this works out for you. Those servants who are ignorant of his Lord's will, and they do things that are worthy of stripes, well, he's going to have mercy on you. Yeah, well, you didn't know any better, right? So you'll be beaten with a few stripes. Your ignorance tribs off a few stripes, but I strongly recommend you study to show yourself approved unto God. That's in the Bible, because he does not approve of your ignorance. Get in the Bible. Listen to what Jesus says about this evil business. Matthew 18:6, but whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. And that's said again in Mark 9:42, and again in Luke 17:2. He would tether the wicked necks of these perverts to a millstone and cast that rock into the sea, dragging these perverts into hell. That's what he thinks about this business of offending these little ones. Listen, I'm tired of hearing this. How can God allow this to happen? How can you allow it? How can Biden and his vile administration not only allow it, but get involved in it? How can Biden's appointment to the HHS be allowed to turn this government agency into a child sex trafficking organization? And don't say, I didn't know. You were supposed to know. And how can you vote for these devils? And how can you sit back while they are hurting the weakest among us and do nothing? And then have the arrogance to blame God? God blames you. He blames all that perpetrate these atrocities on women, children, and men. He blames all who said the light of the gospel does not belong in the chambers of politics. What in the world is wrong with you? He blames all of those who voted for these unreasonable and wicked people, and men and women, that countenance this evil, that opened the door of hell to prey upon our children, who stood by, turning their eyes away because it was just uncomfortable to admit it was going on, or it wasn't politically expedient. These who did not speak truth to their neighbors, legacy media, big pharma, Fauci, Obama, Hillary, Biden, the list is long. These who hid these things from the light. For all in the Obama-Biden DOJ, Merrick Garland, Mayorkas, Ray, including all those judges that perverted judgment for political expedience, lowering the bail for these perverts, releasing them, even helping them escape being arrested. That's another long list. Those who fail to execute judgment according to truth as God sees it, not as these rebels against Christ's rule twist it. And then peace as Christ promised it, peace in liberty. Not the kind of peace you were playing around with, cessation of tensions between people with differing opinions about things. What's the matter with you? And enforcing this by oppression and government dominance over our every move or every word, even controlling our very breath. Not the peace of compelled conformity that you were looking for, not the surveillance state peace where everybody's just docile and surrendered, but the peace of God, advocating charity toward all, accepting the rule of divinely endowed human rights to all, with an honest respect for diversity, not a pretentious diversity that compels conformity to groupthink imposed on us from the masters who would rule our minds and thoughts and souls. All that rage against the notion that America is a Christian nation and despise people like Chief Justice Joseph Story, who ruled that America is a Christian nation. And then that Christians ought to prefer authentic Christians to rule over them, like our first Chief Justice John Jay said, or like our first President George Washington said when he exhorted his soldiers, saying that to the honorable title patriot every American should add the more honorable title Christian. Or Patrick Henry, who said America was founded upon the gospel of Jesus Christ, not on religion. Or, this is also a long list. And when you compare this list to the administrations of Obama and Biden, you can see that we've come a long ways from the faith of our founders. We're floundering in darkness, from light to darkness. It's high time we returned to the light. I wrote a book. I think you'll find the title intriguing, God's War, Why Christians Should Rule the World. How'd that strike you? Hey, this is a test. Does it make you bristle? Does it stir up the Antichrist spirit that has found a home in your wicked heart? Are you like those the Pharisees in the days of Jesus, and it makes you afraid that the government's going to come and take away your place in nation? Do you say, you can't mix Christ with politics? For heaven's sake, man, the word Christ identifies Jesus as king. Last I checked, that's a political office. And as Lord over heaven and earth. Did you catch that? All power has been given unto me in heaven and in earth. That's what Jesus said. The word power is authority. Now, before I go to break, let me ask you another question. If you don't believe Christians ought to rule the world, then who should? Who's supposed to rule it? If Christians, who are kings and priests unto God and ambassadors for Christ's kingdom, and sent to represent him and his kingdom to all the kingdoms of men in this earth, over which he rules, by the way, as the archon, the ruler, the prince over all rulers of the earth, you will say, we must respect the laws of every nation. Really? You respect what Xi and CCP are doing to Christians and Muslims? Yeah, doing that to Muslims too, by the way, the Uyghurs. You think that's okay? How about those who call themselves secularists or humanists, or better, secular humanists? How's that working out for you? We've had about 50 years of that. How's it going? Everybody on the planet can rule with your approval except one group, Christians. And yet, whether you like it or not, that's the one group God has chosen that will rule and will reign with him when he returns. When you rage against the rule of Christ, you reveal what spirit you're of. You give it all to Satan. You bow to his claim on the earth, ignoring that Jesus said that the prince of this world is cast out. Well, you invite him back in. You would lay it all at his feet. You reject Christ's claim on the earth. Remember, he said, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. It's all his. And if you rage against that truth, you are in the company of the heathen who rage. You ever read Psalm 2? I want Christians to understand the role they've had in what's happening here. Hold on. I'll be right back. Have you ever heard of cellular tea? The healing properties of tea are well known. I put the link in my notes right here to examine this particular product. The formula was put together by Andrew St. Wilson in collaboration with medical doctors, NASA scientists, PhD herbalists. My wife heard about this tea and she wanted to start us on it. And she noticed that some hot flash problems she was dealing with went away. This stuff has been connected with testimonies of people dealing with cancer, multiple statements from people who testified helped them beat cancer, and some pretty serious people have taken all that very seriously. And as I mentioned, my wife said it stopped her hot flashes, and I was there for that one. Anyway, we talked about it and decided to take a distributorship for cellular tea to place your order. When you call into the show to give me your lights on or lights off, just say cellular tea and leave your number so she can call you back. Use Santa Maria Cellular Tea at gmail.com. Okay, let's get back to our show.
The devil beware. Pastor Scheidbach is on the
Hello
air.
and welcome back. I'm Dr. Jerry Scheidbach, pastor at the Lighthouse, your brain masseur, and Paul Revere's lantern lighter, lighting the lamps of the Church Belfry Arch, signaling the enemies on the march, an enemy that would steal from us our liberties. I said I wrote a book. It's titled God's War, Why Christians Should Rule the World. Anyone who knows our history knows I'm not talking about reviving the Inquisitions. Get out of here. And the murderous raids on Anabaptists in attempt to perpetrate an ideological ideacide in the Piedmonts, remember? Have you studied this? By this paganized form of Christianity, quote unquote, that bears little resemblance to those who were called Christians in Antioch, long before these came along and sullied that good name in Rome. All who understand the truth about our history know I'm not saying we need to return to popes crowning kings and burning heretics at the stake and censorship and controlled speech. They did all that. Denial of human rights, the exaltation of some heresy called the divine right of kings, a religious system that has a lot more affinity with Islam than it does with the primitive church. When I say Christians should rule the world, I mean those in whom is the spirit of liberty, the spirit of God, with the truth that makes men free, that makes every man a king and a priest with equal rights. Those sorts of folks who speak truth to their neighbors, who execute judgment in truth and peace, who think no evil against their neighbors, and love no false oath. These who have repented and believed on Christ and called in his name to be saved, who reverence the name and so depart from iniquity. These have obeyed the gospel command to repent and believe on Jesus Christ, turning from darkness to light, from the power of Satan to God. These have been translated into the kingdom of God's dear Son right now. They are God's holy nation, according to Peter, each commissioned as an ambassador for Christ to the kings and peoples of this earth, charged to preach this gospel of the kingdom to all the world as a witness to all nations. Then shall the end come. Did you know Islam teaches Mohammedans are the only people who have a right to rule the world? That's right. That's their doctrine. Muslims believe they have a responsibility to subjugate all kingdoms to the rule of Islam. No, they literally teach this. Islam teaches that Muslims should rule the world. And you get mad at me because I say Christians should. Who do you want to rule it? Here you have two imams talking to a reporter, and I've got the link in my notes, in Dearborn, Michigan. And they're explaining their goals and what they're doing to reach their goals. And their goal is to mass in certain cities with the right to vote and use their vote to take over the government there. They do this by voting in Muslims who will represent Islam and encourage Sharia. And slowly by this, they convert our systems of governments away from the Constitution and insubordination to Islam. When the reporter objected that America is not going to allow that, they answered that they understand they can't implement Sharia throughout all America right now, but when they become the majority, then they will subjugate America to Sharia law. Remember that Obama was very welcoming of this belief system. Remember that Biden's policies encouraged immigrants from Muslim countries. They are okay with a religion that says their leader is king and that all men are subject to their rule, and that only their adherents have the right to rule the world so long as it's not Christian. But as I watched this, it became clear that Islam does not really understand our system of governance. Our government recognizes the right of every individual to decide for himself what he or she believes, and our government is not premised on the idea of majority rule. It seems most Americans under 30 thinks this way, but they've been conditioned to think that way by modern-day Democrats. But the fact is, America is not majority rule, as many suppose. By the way, I'm not here offering commentary on election fraud. It's something else. Listen, America is founded on the principle of we the people. But we the people made a contract with one another in our founding to establish a constitutional republic. And it's based on very specific biblical principles. And I can't go over all of them, but just give you a taste of this or an understanding, such as the separation of powers into three branches: the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. Isaiah 33, verse 22. For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, he will save us. The idea that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights is clearly a Christian idea. Each individual is an equal inheritor of the image of God. What God gives to each, life, liberty, and freedom to pursue his happiness in this world, these are inalienable rights that come from God. The idea of freedom of religion, free speech, freedom of the press, freedom of association, and more, that all comes out of Christianity. And you don't want Christians to rule the world? What's the matter with you? None of these things is up to a majority vote. These things are the inheritance of every man born in this world. And our laws, all of them, are designed to restrict the majority from intruding upon these individual rights. Islam and the Roman system deny this. These systems believe all men are subjects to a civil authority controlled by them, that whatever rights anyone has are defined and bequeathed to them by a benevolent government. Each of these systems is based on the concept, or something like it, the divine right of kings. We believe there is no king but Christ, a la Cromwell. Islam and traditional Romanists believe that they are the sole arbiters of rights, the definers of truth, the rulers of men's souls. I need to move toward a wrap for today. Listen up, my friends. These Muslim people think they can take over our country on the principle of majority rule. They think that that is the American system, but they're wrong. We are a constitutional republic. We have covenanted together to form a union around the ideas expressed in our Declaration and in our Constitution. The only element of democracy you can find in our system is in the fact that we do believe in the people's right of consent, and that the only people that can rule in our nation or in our government are those that the majority of the people elect. But what they don't understand is that every person elected is obligated to swear allegiance to the contract, the Constitution, to uphold it and defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, every political ruler must swear allegiance to this or they are disqualified from holding office. We don't love any false oath takers. We reject them. Furthermore, if they violate that oath, they are disqualified from continuing in that office. God hates a false oath. These imams are ignorant. They think if a majority decides we don't have free speech, then our right to free speech is gone. They're wrong. If we stand up to these traitors and point them out and repudiate their evil nonsense of swearing falsely and acting contrary to our Constitution, disregarding our supreme law, and that includes the gatekeepers of our laws, the courts, no court has any authority to cancel the Constitution. And when this happens, it is the duty of we the people to rise up and put down these traitors. And one way we do that is by electing a president, the only office elected by the whole of the people, and communicate to him a mandate to enforce the laws of our land. President Trump is to be lauded for his patience and desire to maintain order within the structure provided by our founders. But in the end of the day, our Constitution is the law of the land, not the judges, not the judiciary, not even the legislature, by the way, and not the executive either, when any of these act independently of the Constitution. The role of the majority is limited by the Constitution. The people can amend it, but only according to the rules provided in the Constitution, which protects us from having a government that rides on the mere whims of a simple majority of the people. We, the people, are the final guardians of the Constitution, ultimately. And the will of the people will reflect what God the people serve. If it's mammon, it's all about the love of money. If we sit back and allow Islam to capture the hearts of the people, like we let secular humanism do for so long, we're going to lose our republic. But here's the thing. If we do not have the will to enforce our greatest law of the land, if we become a lawless people ourselves, God tells us what he's going to do. He's going to turn such a nation into hell. So the Bible says. Anyway, I gotta wrap it up. The next pandemic has been launched, but I've got to look into this a little further and sort some things out because I'm not real sure that this is a bona fide report. But Jesus did say there would be rumors of wars and pestilence and so on, and Fauci has been working hard to fulfill that prophecy, and so we need to look at this. I'll look at it Saturday night with you. My friends, it's time to go. Speak truth to your neighbor, execute the judgment of truth and peace. Do not imagine evil against your neighbor, and love no false oath. I've lit the lamps of the Church Belfry Arch. You let me know you see that they are on. Call 1-805-314-2114. Again, 1-805-314-2114. Say lights on if you agree with what I'm saying here, or lights off if you disagree. God bless you, my dear friends. God bless America. And I'll see you in church.